They say, China is different to the West, which is absolutely true. Therefore, it must be China which is wrong. But this is ridiculous because it's the Chinese economy which is growing faster. And therefore, what they should say is, China is different to the West, and it's the West which is less successful. Well, the challenge is there are external challenges and there are domestic challenges. The external challenge is obviously the attempt by the United States to slow down the Chinese economy, and the fact that is through tariffs and sanctions and so on. And that's the policy by the United States. And the other is that the global North economies are growing very slowly. The United States is growing on average about slightly over 2% a year, and the European economy is growing at 1% a year. So these are objective problems which confront China. Okay. The biggest challenge inside is some confusions created by wrong ideas which exist in Western economics, in which people are trying to persuade China's economy to adopt basically the same structure as the United States. China's economy grows at about 5% a year. The US economy grows at slightly over 2% a year. If China's economy were to adopt the same basic structure as the United States, then it would slow down and grow at 2% a year. Then the United States would be very pleased with the situation because in that case China would never overtake the US economy. And this is therefore a huge international debate. The most important debate, economic debate in the world, is the attempt of the United States to persuade China to adopt the same economic structure as the United States, in which case China's economy won't grow at 5% a year, it will grow at 2% a year. And this leads to various technical discussions about things like the percentage of consumption and the percentage of investment in GDP, but each of these has very, very big social forces behind it. I mean, if you look at it rather simply, China invests about 40% of GDP and grows at 5% a year. The US economy invests about 20% of GDP and grows at about slightly over 2% a year. Obviously, if China were to reduce its level of investment down to the level of the United States, that's to 20%, well then China's economy would also slow down to 2%. So therefore you have this weird debate whereby people say, look, China's economy doesn't look like the United States, or it doesn't look like the Western economy. No, of course it doesn't, because it's more successful. It's growing faster. If the Chinese economy looked like the United States, it would grow at the same, much slower speed than the United States. So it's a sort of bizarre discussion of sort of Western arrogance. They say, China is different to the West, which is absolutely true. Therefore, it must be China which is wrong. But this is ridiculous because it's the Chinese economy which is growing faster. And therefore, what they should say is, China is different to the West, and it's the West which is less successful. Let me take a comparison, because Goldman Sachs recently produced a report which made exactly this type of argument. Supposing a company went to Goldman Sachs and said, we want to enter a new industry. Goldman Sachs, please come give us some advice. And what Goldman Sachs said, well, look, this is the industry. These are the companies which is most successful, and these are the companies which are less successful. You shouldn't copy the company which is the most successful. You shouldn't learn from the most successful company. You should learn from the less successful companies. Well, everybody would laugh at this just before they cancelled their contract with Goldman Sachs for giving them idiotic advice. But that's exactly what is happening with this Western argument, which is China is growing much faster than the West, or than the United States and Europe. Therefore, they argue that China must adopt the economic structure of the United States and Europe, in which case China will slow down. This is absolutely a bizarre argument. But nevertheless, the Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times, the Economist put out this type of stuff all the time. And therefore, this leads to unfortunately, some people in China copy this nonsense. And therefore, this leads to internal discussion in China. So those are the internal main ideological issues. There are then objective problems which can't be overcome quickly, in which China has the correct policies, but they simply can't be solved quickly. For example, research and development. China has by far the highest level of research and development as a percentage of GDP of any global south country. It's about 2.4% of GDP. It's almost twice that of the second one, which is Turkey. And it's ahead of some of the G7 economies, but it's still behind as a percentage of GDP, the United States, Japan, Germany. And China can't solve this problem quickly because it's not a question of money. The fundamental thing that you need for research and development is you need trained people. And it takes 20 years from somebody entering primary school to coming out the other end with an engineering PhD, which is the type of thing which is you need for research and development. So the increase in China's expenditure on R&D is held back not simply by money. If it was money, it could be solved immediately. It takes a long time to train such people. So these are real objective problems. So we may say there's 3 levels of problem. One is the slow growth of the United States and Europe and its attempts to slow down China. The second is foolish arguments which have no intellectual validity, which are put forward by the West to try to slow down China. And then there are real objective issues, which is due to China's level of development. Only about around 15% of China's population has higher education, compared to 50% in the United States or 70% in South Korea. And it will take a very long time, in that case, decades, to train it. So there's sort of 3 sets of problems. Can they copy? No. Every single country in the world is specific. And therefore, if you copy mechanically another country, you will inevitably be adopting the wrong policy. But can you learn lessons from it? Yeah, the answer to that is yes, you certainly can. And therefore, what is the big lessons for China? You have to have a very high level of investment to grow fast. All the Asian economies which are growing rapidly, and there are, India grows rapidly, South Korea grew rapidly, Indonesia grows rapidly, Vietnam grows rapidly, India grows rapidly. They all have very high level of investment in the economy. Then you also need an open economy. That is, you need to participate in international trade. The attempt to create a self-contained economy won't work properly. Those countries which did it, what used to be called the import substitution strategy, it won't work. You need a high level of research and development. This is where, for example, South Korea is still ahead of China. Japan is still ahead of China. Not because of wrong policies by China, but because it takes a long, long time to train people in, to give them PhDs in engineering or PhDs in science or PhDs in mathematics and things like that, which is what is the really important things for that. So you need high investment, you need an open economy, you need skilled labour, you need high levels of research and development. These are common in all these countries. How they actually combine in each country, that's completely specific. So yes, China's has great lessons for other countries, but it can't be mechanically copied by other countries.